Tamara also has nearly 2 decades of experience in change management, business development and business improvement across the private, public and non-profit business sectors, which has been recognised through being a Queensland finalist in Telstra Young Businesswomen's Award and a Brisbane finalist in AIMS Young Manager Awards. I ask you please to welcome Tamara.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Jenny, for the opportunity. It's interesting, isn't it? I'm sure that Itesh's introduction was, finance, not the thing. I'm sure when people go systems, they go, oh no, this is not what we want to talk about. It's often the topic where people go, no, I don't want to talk about systems. I don't want to talk about time management, but particularly systems. Who gets excited about writing policies and procedures? Yay! There's a few in the room, but we're usually few and far between. But what we find within businesses, and even in talking about finance, talking about sales, what was the common word that came through? It was about processes. It was about looking at things. Systems are about building really great foundations in your business, and we ignore them because we go, oh, I don't have time to do that. I'll get to that. When I get time or when I get more staff, I'll do that. And unfortunately, what happens is that our businesses may grow quite quickly, but if we don't put really good systems in and good foundations in, you won't have a sustainable business, you won't have a business that you can sell. And often, if the knowledge stays in your head, rather than actually documenting that in all different ways, a couple of things happen. It stays up here and you never get to sleep. But also, if you have staff, that knowledge walks out the door. And we get into the somebody, anybody, don't know who did that sort of job and part of that process. So I'm really about, Jenny talked about vision. My vision for businesses is really about 3 things. I want every business to be simple. And simple isn't dumbing it down, simple isn't cheap, simple is about how can this work for you in the easiest way possible. You don't have to have procedure manuals that are this thick. You can have a 1-page flowchart that can give you everything that you actually need. I think oftentimes when we hear processes and things like that, we've got this mismatch because we've heard about quality assurance and we've all, often been in those organisations where everything was in triplicate and it just got too hard and too complicated. So to me, business, it should be simple. It should absolutely be profitable. And too often, I totally agree, we see businesses that are not making money. But I've got money in the bank tomorrow. Yeah, that's not quite where we want to be. Okay, and I agree. There's ways that I'm very passionate about service. That's what I'm all about. It is about making a difference. It is about helping people, but you still have to make money to do that. I think all of us in our businesses, particularly when you're in a service-based business, give too much of our time away for free, and we love doing that, and that's great. But we still have to look at how we can actually monetize that and look at different ways so that people are valuing what we have. And processes and systems will actually help you do that. And time management and other things will help you do that. So you have to make money, but it's also got to be fun. I'm sure for most of us, we got into business because we wanted flexibility, we wanted freedom. We maybe were the disgruntled employee that went, I can do it better than you, so I'm going to do it on my own, things like that. But it has to be fun. And oftentimes business isn't. It gets really complicated. Teams on the surface might be looking really good, but as a business scene investigator, my job is to investigate what's really going on. It's not all happy families on the surface. It might be on the surface, and then you start to dig deeper, and there's a whole lot of gossip going on, there's a whole lot of backstabbing and other things happening, which doesn't help your business. It also happens with your clients as well, because if we're not in touch with really what's going on, if we're not making sure that everything is okay, then that repeat business actually isn't coming. How often are we actually valuing our current clients? I mean, look at the ads now. If you change phone companies or anything, they'll do any business for you to get your business. I've been with Dreaded Telstra for a really long time, but you don't always get the value that you need as the repeat customer. But if I was a new customer with someone else, I'd get everything. You get all the bangs and whistles. What are we actually doing with our clients to value those who then become our raving fans and all of that? And we need systems to actually make that happen as part of that process. And as I said, I'm all about service. But service isn't just about great customer service, which it absolutely should be, but it's about how are you serving your team, even if that's a team of one, and how are you serving your community? Because I believe every business should be a mad business, and we need to make a difference, and we need to instill that in everything that we do. But we need to make money to be able to do some of that as well. So when we look at things, I'm very much about having a balance. And when we start looking at what's going on, we need to look at things within our business, we need to look at things within our people, but we also need to look at things within our systems. And they are the foundations. They are key to how we can have a profitable, sustainable business. And I can tell you right now, there's never a good time to do them. You'll never find enough time. There'll never be a quiet time. You just got to get in and do them. And part of what I'm going to do over the workshop series is show you how you can do a little bit each day. Because I run my own business as well, sometimes time is just not there. So how can we do a little bit? Because it's if we do a little bit every day, then the outcome after a month, you go, wow, I've done that already, that's fantastic. But there's never a good time to do it, so get past that. There's never a good time. But it's essential. And this is what happens is we go, oh, we'll get to it. And it just doesn't happen, okay? And also, it doesn't happen overnight. It does take a long time. It takes a long time and money to actually get really good processes and systems in place. But a little bit each day makes that happen. And the reason why that we need really good processes is because we're doing all this stuff. We're juggling so many things, particularly those of you that, you know, you've got 27,000 hats on. You're doing the marketing, you're doing the sales, all of those type of things. And that's where you think, I haven't got time, I've got to bring the money in. You know, I've got to get clients in the door and do all that. And I get all of that. But if our clients are getting an inconsistent experience every time they deal with us, then how can they refer us? Because they start with a great experience, but if they refer us to someone else and they don't get that great experience, then what happens? Our business, you know, is an issue. And marketing and all that comes into play. What happens too is that we get into this state. We get into a state of confusion. We get into a state of, I really don't know what I need to be doing. You know, sometimes it feels like you can't see the wood for the trees. And processes are a lot like that. What I tell my clients when we're really getting into documenting things is systems are just about change. That's all they're about. So firstly, you've got to embrace that. So that's where I start. It's not about writing the policy and procedures. Anyone can do that. Maybe not necessarily well, but anyone can have a procedure manual. But if it sits on the deck, if it becomes a dust collector, because you haven't changed your approach of how you do things, if you haven't brought your team on that journey as part of the ownership, it doesn't matter. I've seen lots of people go, yeah, we've got all these procedures. Are they using them? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, well, that doesn't really help, does it? Okay, so we need to break through what that confusion actually is. We need to also look at what our time is. Everyone goes, oh, I'm too busy, I'm time poor. But we all know we've got the same amount of time. So what I want to give you through this series is different strategies, because imagine if you get back an hour a day. That's what we're talking about. An hour a day. 5 hours a week. Multiply that by your hourly rate. Now we start to make a bit of a difference, because it's about the simple things. And I can give you some really little strategies that will get you an hour a day. And once you've mastered that, then you can go and do all those other stuff as well. But imagine if you get back an hour a day. And that hour enables you to go and have more sales conversations and try and get in more leads, to do social media, to do all those other things. Imagine getting back an hour a day. I'd like to think that our offices don't look like that. Mine sometimes does. Mine has often been declared a fire hazard by my partner, particularly because I travel a lot, so I dump. Everything goes on the office floor, and it gets to a point where I go, oh, that's just not very good. Because what happens is that when we have cluttered space, we often have cluttered mind, and we need to get clarity through that, right? Sometimes it's a bit tricky, particularly if you work from home, that maybe there's not a lot of space, and you know, family doesn't like it when you go to the kitchen and the lounge room and the dining room. But it's making sure at least you know what the piles are, post-it notes, little tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to say you've all got to have, you know, the clear desk every day, but there is method into having some clarity around that and not making sure that we have offices that look like that. And I've seen a lot worse as well. We also need to make sure, as I said, when we're developing those processes, that they're really simple. but that they focus on what's important. And oftentimes we don't write for our customer. We tell them all the jargon that we think they should know, but we actually don't tell them how to place an order. You know, we haven't worked out how we're going to answer the phone. The phone script is just a system. It's just a different system. And that's what I want to show you through the series. There's all different systems that you can have, and it's not just necessarily about flowcharts and checklists, although they are essential. But how do you answer the phone? If you've got a team, does everyone answer the phone in the same way? It sounds really simple, but you would be amazed at how different it sounds. And you think, but can't we just write a sentence? And those type of things. Okay, because we want to make sure that we're not doing this. Because this is often what we do in business. And we need to look at different ways around that and make sure that we're not doing that. So when I talk to clients, it's also about reflecting and deflecting. I grew up with Wonder Woman, I love her. But we need to do that. We need to do that within ourselves. We have to sit back and look and go, what's really going on here? How can I run my business in a better way? And we have to stop and we have to ensure that each day we're working on our business as well as in it, which is a really big challenge. But we also need to be looking at how we're deflecting some things. People around us, learning to say no, all those type of things. And so part of my branding is around being a business scene investigator, so like a CSI, but on businesses. So what I do is I find the evidence, follow the suspects to solve the case. And that's what I'm going to teach you to do. Because we've got to solve things. We've got to make sure that we're not just band-aiding things all the time, but we're actually going deep and finding out what's really going on. And we try something, and if it didn't work for us, then we try something else. I certainly won't be giving you things which says this is the only way to do it. And certainly around time management, I have tried a whole range of things. And I'm going to show you all the stages that I've gone through to get different routines. And it changes because it doesn't always work and it needs to be looked at, you know, particularly if you travel. And sometimes your week if you're a consultant can change like that. And so therefore routines are really, really tricky for me. So I don't have it all figured out, but I'm going to share some of those with you. And we need to be making sure that when we're looking at things, we are doing it the easiest way possible for us right now. But there needs to be some logic and some reason behind that as part of that process. We also need to make sure that we do plan. And unfortunately, too often than not, businesses don't. They're running, they're reactive, reactive. This is what we'll do, this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do, with not much thought around that, let alone the vision that Jennie will talk to you about. And that just means we're behind the 8 ball all the time. And then we procrastinate, and I am one of the world's biggest procrastinators, and I own that, right? Got to get stuff done. So just because I love systems and I'm detailed and all of that sort of stuff doesn't mean I put stuff off, because I do. Okay? So it's a real challenge for me, and I'm going to share that with you. So it doesn't come easy to me as part of that process. What comes easy to me is getting the knowledge out of people's heads and documenting that and helping them do that, because detail matters. So even just today, I wanted to give you a tip. So if you haven't heard, it's about the 4 things. So if your email comes in or mail comes in, you've got to do it, you've got to diarise it, delegate it, or delete it. It's how we use paper, it's how we use electronic stuff, and match those particular things. Okay, so I'm going to touch on these throughout the workshop, but my key principles are really around you've got to build strong foundations. You've got to be the tortoise, not the hare. You've got to have a weekly routine. You've got to bring business etiquette back into our businesses. No can be your best friend. The devil is in the detail, so you've got to accept the price. You've got to have another set of eyes looking at things, because we're all too close to our own work. You have to deal with things, don't avoid them. You have to make sure it's about them, it's not about you. And we have to make profit, not just make money. Okay? And I'm going to expand on all of that throughout the workshop series, but that's a lot of the foundational stuff. So my last bit is that it's always about the next step. So when I'm working with clients and talking about clarity, there's a whole range of principles and a 7-step process that I use within that, but it's always about what's the next step? Where are you at right now? What do we need to do to get to the next step? Because I think too often we go, shh, and then we go, oh, it's just too hard. It's over, I can't write it. One process, one thing at a time, and get that bit done. So my challenge to you and to come into these things is it's about the next step. So for each of these workshops, it will be, what's your next step to move you from here to there? And it doesn't have to be a massive leap. If it is, that's awesome, but it can just be those little tiny steps. And I'm a huge sport fan in all different sports, but particularly AFL with Hawthorn. But I've always loved this quote from Rod McQueen, that you can learn more from mistakes than you can from success. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually about whether we then reflect on those learnings or whether we just keep making the same mistake and doing that insanity thing that we shouldn't be doing. Okay, so I really look forward to working with you throughout the workshop series. It will be very practical and all that sort of stuff, and I want to give you tips that work for the person who's just by themselves plus those within a team. And I thank you very much for the opportunity.